Today we've got some very bizarre leaks and rumors about an upcoming iPad that we haven't talked about in the past. We've generally been talking about two new budget iPads. Most of us are expecting these two new budget iPads to come out at the March 25th event entitled It's Showtime, which is clearly going to be about Apple's subscription services coming up. But like I said, I also expect there to be a little bit of hardware, not huge things, but upgrades to the iPad mini. We've seen new screen protector leaks and case leaks to suggest that the iPad mini is making a revival. And we've had several analysts in the past say that there's a new 2019 budget iPad that's going to have a 10.2-inch display, abandoning that 9.7-inch design that we've had ever since the original iPad. This is going to have a bigger screen, thinner bezels, but still not break the bank. And of course, months ago, we got that iPad Pro refresh that, for the most part, people have been very excited about. USB-C, ProMotion displays, Face ID working in any orientation you want, incredibly fast CPU power with the A12X chip. Now we're getting an iPad leak that's falling right in the middle. The 10.5-inch iPad design that this particular leaker is saying is not going to have a Pro naming scheme next to it. It's not going to be considered an iPad Pro, but also not to be bunched in with the budget iPads we're getting at the end of March. This is going to fall somewhere in the middle, which generates a lot of questions for me, a lot of confusion, and as I like to do on this channel, a lot of theorizing of how this product launch could go. So today we're talking about the potential of a new iPad genre entering the lineup and, yeah, distorting everything even more than it already is. Let's begin. So some of you may be concerned about the validity of this rumor and be saying, this probably isn't real. Well, this leak comes from a Twitter user who refers to himself as CoinX. Very, very anonymous. No profile picture, no name, no cover photo. Very, very quiet and not much attention drawn to him. But if you go back and look at his tweets in the past, this guy has an incredibly great track record. You know those reports before the new iPhones came out that said they're going to be called the XS Max, the XS, and the bizarrely named iPhone XR? Yeah, that was this guy. He somehow knew that before the products were announced. He also exactly gave everyone the dimensions of the new iPad Pro, saying they won't have a headphone jack and they'll be 5.9 millimeters thin. He ended up being exactly right, and he tweeted this before the event took place. There's a ton more leaks that he tweeted in the past that ended up being accurate, but the takeaway is this guy is good and is likely someone who works at Apple and is keeping things very, very hush-hush there and is trying to be as secretive and anonymous as possible. Well, he tweeted something new today suggesting that there will be a 10.2-inch iPad and a 10.5-inch iPad, but they will not be released at the same time. So the 10.2-inch iPad leak is not a new piece of information to us. Quo has even talked about the 10.2-inch iPad in the past, and the fact that he's saying these iPads are not going to be released at the same time, I think is good evidence to suggest that we are getting hardware at this event, as I mentioned earlier. But the 10.5-inch iPad, this is the first time we've heard of that getting revived. Currently, there's a 2017 10.5-inch iPad Pro that's still being sold by Apple right now for $650, but it kind of sits in a little bit of a weird space. It has ProMotion, but it still charges via Lightning, and it has Touch ID and a home button, and for $650, that's kind of outdated features for what you're paying for. And as many people have brought up on my Twitter already, it is kind of bizarre that with the iPad lineup, we go from $330 iPad, and then if you want something nicer than that model, you have to spend $800 on the new generation iPad Pros. That's, of course, if you're ignoring the 2017 iPad Pro, but still, I agree. There's a big gap there between budget models and Pro models, and I think there's a ton of people out there that would love to see an iPad that kind of falls somewhat in the middle, even if that makes the iPad lineup incredibly distorted. I agree. It's already getting kind of crazy. We have 10.5-inch iPad Pro, 11-inch iPad Pro with Face ID, USB-C, and the boxy design, 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and then in the budget market, we're going to have 10.2-inch iPad and 7.9-inch iPad mini. It's going to be very, very crazy if Apple decides to introduce a new iPad, hopefully somewhere in between all of these prices. So I would imagine most likely starting around $499, maybe lean towards $599, depending on what kind of features and specs we're going to get with the 10.5-inch iPad. But the internal dilemma for me is, what is this iPad going to be closer to? Is it going to have design elements from the iPad Pro with the new boxy designs, Face ID, and going all in on gesture controls and no home button? Or is is this just going to be an upgraded, more premium version of the budget iPads we're getting in just a couple weeks? Honestly, I could see it going either way, but in my opinion, the fact that the 10.2-inch budget iPad that we should be seeing at this March event is not really going to be a huge design change. It's going to keep the headphone jack, keep Touch ID, keep a home button. It's just made to be affordable. That's its primary feature. If that's coming out soon, it doesn't make sense to me that later in the year, Apple would release a 10.5-inch iPad, not a Pro, that still has Touch ID, headphone jack, and those traditional bezel designs, because that would be far too close in design to those budget options, meaning the primary reasons for you to get the 10.5 over the 10.2 would be that tiny 0.3-inch display difference, maybe a slightly better CPU, or maybe a slightly better display. Perhaps the 10.5-inch iPad would be laminated and the 10.2-inch wouldn't be. I don't know. I feel like those iPads would share too many similarities in making two different products that are that bizarrely close to each other doesn't make sense. So in my opinion, what this 10.5-inch iPad could be that makes a lot more sense to me is a scaled down version of the current generation iPad Pros. These iPads were a home run for Apple. These have sold really well, and a lot of people are buying them, and despite all of the problems with the bending and a lot of people criticizing it for that, they've overall satisfied a lot of people who have bought them. Switching to USB-C was a great plus. The ProMotion displays are still incredible, and with these thinner bezels, that hardware experience of you interacting with a device has gotten even slimmer than before. Not to mention those insane A12X chips that they put inside these iPad Pros that make them super lightning fast. They're overall really great product. But I agree, some of the biggest problems with the iPad Pro is it is kind of expensive. $800 for the regular sized model, and if you want the larger iPad Pro, that's a starting price of $1,000, which is easily nearing laptop territory for a device that can't do all the things most laptops can. So perhaps if Apple tried to make a scaled down version of that iPad that still kept Face ID, kept gesture controls, no Touch ID anymore, have that one size bezel all the way around so it still looks really good, but maybe cut out some of the features that not everyone necessarily cares about with the new iPad Pros so that you can build a quality iPad in a more affordable package. My go-to suggestion would be to remove ProMotion. As cool as it is, I love 120 Hertz. If you're paying top dollar, I think a ton more people out there would be comfortable with a versatile iPad even if the display is stuck at 60 Hertz just like their iPhone. So you don't have a ProMotion display, but you still have that futuristic iPad design that's all built around gesture controls, and Face ID would still work in any orientation. But of course, with that 10.5-inch display, it's a lot smaller than the current iPad Pros, which have a 11-inch and 12.9-inch display. This would be a tad more compact, and even maybe they won't ship with a smart connector. It will have that similarity with the budget iPads that you don't have these easy attachments to the device so that you can instantly pair a keyboard with it and type with it that way. In order to pair a keyboard with this more affordable iPad Pro, you'd have to connect it via Bluetooth and charge it separately. But I don't know, maybe $499 is still too premium for Apple to leave out the smart connector, but in my opinion, leaving out the smart connector to keep the price lower is completely justified, because I don't think it makes a lot of sense that someone who's trying to save money on their iPad and get the $500 model would suddenly be okay with spending $200 on a keyboard case, which is what you have to do with the current gen iPad Pro. So maybe leaving the keyboard cases as a Pro feature would be a fairly good idea. But to compromise and meet in the middle a little bit, allow the Apple Pencil 2 to pair with this budget iPad along the side, with it keeping this boxy design. I also think maybe the speakers don't have to be as loud. Maybe just stick with stereo speakers instead of quad speakers as they have right now with one in each corner. So okay, the sound's not as good, and then maybe instead of the A12X chip, which is really fast and super powerful, put in something like the A12 chip, which is still really capable and one of the fastest ARM-based chips out there, but not as expensive to make as the A12X chip and can be in this more affordable package, which by the way would suddenly become the most affordable device you can get Face ID with. Kind of like an iPad R, if you will. Kind of confused what they're going to do with the naming. They can't really just call this iPad because we already have iPad. That's what the budget one is right now. So we have iPad mini, we have regular iPad, we have iPad Pros. If they're making something in the middle, what exactly would it... Oh my god, guys, I figured out what they're going to call the new 10.5-inch iPad. They are going to revive the branding and the name iPad Air. This will be the long-awaited iPad Air 3. I've been waiting for this for years, but it makes sense. They brought back the MacBook Air, didn't they? After we thought they discontinued it and pushed back the MacBook Air and they were never going to touch it again. In 2018, we got a new MacBook Air. So now in 2019, probably in WWDC, we're going to see the revival of the iPad Air line, and they'll call it iPad Air 3. I don't know. It's impossible to say, but this guy's pretty accurate, so you should be expecting a perfect in-between middle ground iPad later this year that takes the best of the iPad Pros and some of the compromises of the budget iPads and puts them together into a quality but somewhat more affordable option. Let me know what you guys think of this iPad. Would you be interested in it? Let me know what you're thinking down in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.